I wouldn't say the tree was haunted, but more imprinted from the violent history of the land. The history in question is one steeped in pain and loss, tied to a land that has seen far too much suffering. Before diving into the story, let me give you a bit of background about myself, just so you understand where I'm coming from. I have a bachelor's degree in pre-medical biology from a very reputable private college, which means I've spent years studying the human body, the intricacies of life, and the sciences behind it all. Initially, I had planned to attend medical school, a path I was quite passionate about. But as life often does, it took me in a different direction, and I ended up changing my career path to nursing. Despite this shift, my training and education have always fostered a logical and analytical mindset. I'm very much left-brained, the type of person who needs concrete evidence, facts, and data before believing in something. I'm not religious, and I've never put much stock in anything paranormal, finding it difficult to believe in things that can't be proven scientifically. Or at least, that's how I felt before this trip. Even now, I'm not entirely sure what to think of what happened to me during this experience. It's left me questioning a lot of what I thought I knew. This event took place on February 2nd, 2015, a date that is forever etched into my memory and confirmed by the timestamps on the pictures I took that day. My ex-girlfriend and I were outside of Robbinsville, North Carolina, deep in the mountains. We were visiting her father, who was renting a house on a large piece of land while he was building his retirement home on top of the mountain. The land itself had a dark history, as it was part of the Trail of Tears, the forced relocation of Native Americans from their ancestral lands. This land had seen the suffering and death of countless individuals, and it was clear that it held significant meaning and perhaps a kind of residual energy from those tragic events. We all know, or at least can imagine, how sacred their lands were and still are to them. The first night we stayed there, we slept in the guest room downstairs, a cozy but slightly eerie room with a rustic feel. As soon as I laid down, I felt a sensation that was entirely new to me, something that I had never experienced before and haven't felt since. It was as if there were unseen eyes watching me, a presence that I couldn't quite put my finger on. My ex-girlfriend slept soundly next to me, seemingly undisturbed by whatever it was that I was feeling. I tried to shake off the sensation as I began to drift off to sleep, but something was building inside of me, something I couldn't ignore. It started as a small knot in my stomach, but it quickly grew, spreading throughout my body. My breathing became more rapid and my heart rate increased dramatically. I was terrified, but not by anything I could see or hear. There was just this overwhelming sense of fear that I couldn't explain. I was 21 at the time, a large and strong guy thanks to my years of playing college football, and I wasn't the type to get spooked easily. This was completely out of character for me, and I had no idea what was happening to me. Finally, I mustered up the courage to open my eyes as quickly as I could, half expecting to see someone or something standing over me. But when I looked around, the room was empty, just as it had been when we went to bed. It was just the two of us in that dark room, and yet I felt ridiculous and even a little embarrassed by how scared I had been. After a few moments, I calmed down, feeling silly for letting my imagination run wild. To distract myself, I put on a movie, The Eagle, that ancient Roman flick with Channing Tatum, and fell asleep soon after. The next morning, around 7 a.m., I was standing at the kitchen sink when I was hit by an intense wave of nausea, so sudden and overwhelming that I barely had time to react before I vomited. It wasn't much, just some stomach acid since I hadn't eaten breakfast yet. But as soon as it happened, I felt perfectly fine again, as if nothing had ever been wrong. It was weird, to say the least, but I brushed it off as a fluke. Maybe it was something I ate the day before, I thought. However, the exact same thing happened the next morning at 7 a.m., in the same spot at the kitchen sink. Once again, I vomited, and once again, I felt completely fine afterward. This time, though, it was too strange to ignore. Everyone else in the house asked if I was okay, but I reassured them that I felt perfectly fine, which was true. I had no idea why this was happening, especially since I had no history of morning sickness, acid reflux, GERD, or anything like that. I only ever throw up when I've had too much to drink, but I hadn't touched a drop of alcohol on this trip. This was completely out of the norm for me, and I couldn't explain it. As the peculiarities of the trip started to pile up, I tried to rationalize them, dismissing each odd event as mere coincidence. Yet the nagging feeling that something was off wouldn't leave me. After the second morning's episode of unexplained nausea, I was starting to feel uneasy. My ex-girlfriend's father, a physician by profession, a DO, not an MD, began to share some strange stories about the house and the land it was built on. His tone was serious, not at all like the man I knew who rarely, if ever, entertained thoughts of the supernatural. The tales he shared were chilling, particularly coming from someone as scientifically minded as he was. The first story he told us was about the nights they spent in the house. He said they had to lock their bedroom door at night because of the footsteps they would hear on the stairs. These footsteps were so loud and distinct that they could hear them clearly from the bedroom, and they were certain no one else was in the house. My ex-girlfriend's father had initially dismissed the noises as the house settling or some other mundane explanation, but the regularity and clarity of the footsteps began to wear on him. The sound was unmistakable, heavy steps moving deliberately up and down the stairs. The fact that he took the precaution of locking the door was telling. This was a man who didn't scare easily, but he felt the need to protect himself from whatever might be making those sounds. Then there was the story of the shadow figure. My ex-girlfriend's father had seen it one evening as he was walking across the land. He described it as a huge dark shape towering over the trees and moving slowly across the landscape. It was unlike anything he had ever seen before, a massive figure that seemed to be made of pure darkness. The sight of it had shaken him, and he had been reluctant to walk the property alone after that. The shadow appeared to be watching over the land, a silent guardian, or perhaps something more sinister. It wasn't just a fleeting glimpse. He had stood there, rooted to the spot, watching this figure for what felt like an eternity until it finally faded away. When he described it to us, I could see the unease in his eyes, a genuine fear that was unsettling to witness in a man who was otherwise so composed. Another strange occurrence involved the house phone. They had a landline in the house, a relic of the past that had been out of service for years, according to my ex-girlfriend's father. Yet, on several occasions, the phone would ring exactly 3 times before falling silent. 3 rings and then nothing. This detail sent a shiver down my spine. I've seen enough horror movies to know that the number 3 often carries sinister connotations, frequently associated with demons or malevolent spirits. The fact that the phone was supposed to be disconnected only added to the creepiness. He insisted that the phone hadn't been used in years, and there was no logical reason for it to ring. The unnerving precision of 3 rings was what disturbed him the most, and hearing about it made me feel like we were in the middle of some horror story, the kind where things start subtly and then escalate into something much darker. The most bizarre and unsettling story, however, was about the face in the tree. My ex-girlfriend's father spoke of a tree on the property that, on certain days, would appear to have the face of a woman etched into the bark. He had seen it himself and described it as a clear, unmistakable image, not a trick of the light or a random pattern in the wood. He was so excited to show us this face, almost as if he needed validation, someone else to see what he had seen. It was odd to see him so eager, almost giddy, about something so strange, especially since he had never mentioned any of these occurrences to his daughter before. This made me wonder why he had kept these stories to himself all this time, and why he was only now revealing them to us. We followed him out to the tree, half expecting to see some kind of optical illusion, a discoloration in the bark, or a pattern that could be mistaken for a face. I was certain that whatever he saw could be easily explained, but when we got to the tree, there was nothing there. The bark was just that. Bark. No face, no image, nothing out of the ordinary. My ex-girlfriend's father looked genuinely disappointed, as if he had been hoping for us to see what he had seen, to prove that he wasn't imagining things. But the tree showed us nothing, and we all felt a bit silly standing there, staring at it. We laughed it off, joked about how the mountain air must be playing tricks on his mind, and then moved on, forgetting about the incident for the rest of the trip. It wasn't until the last day, just before we were about to leave, that the face in the tree made its appearance. My ex-girlfriend and I were the last to leave the rental house, getting the final pieces of luggage into the car when I happened to glance back at the tree, and there it was. The face of a woman, clear as day, staring back at me from the bark of the tree. I couldn't believe what I was seeing. It wasn't just a vague outline or a suggestion of a face. It was a distinct image, almost like a portrait carved into the tree. I was stunned, my heart racing as I stared at it, unable to look away. I yelled for my ex-girlfriend to come over, but she was unimpressed, more annoyed by the delay than anything else. To her, it was just a trick of the light, but to me, it was something else entirely. I snapped a few pictures quickly, wanting to capture the image before it disappeared again. We called her father to tell him what we had seen, and he responded with a triumphant "yes!" as if he had been waiting for this moment. It was as if the face's reappearance was some kind of validation for him, proof that what he had seen before was real. The experience left me shaken, and as we drove away from the house, I couldn't stop thinking about that face in the tree, the way it seemed to appear and disappear at will. The unsettling feeling that had started on the first night had only grown stronger, and I couldn't shake the sense that we had been in the presence of something beyond our understanding. As unsettling as the experiences had been, they were just the beginning. My ex-girlfriend and I had originally planned to spend a few more days in the rental house, but after what had happened, we decided it was best to head back to Mississippi as soon as possible. We had hoped that the strange events were behind us, but it became clear that this trip had more in store for us. Once we returned to Mississippi, we tried to go back to our normal lives, but the memories of those days in the mountains lingered. The face in the tree was the topic of many conversations between my ex-girlfriend and me, and it was a source of fascination and unease. We showed the photos to friends and family, who all had varying reactions. Some were intrigued, others skeptical, but none could offer a clear explanation. Weeks passed, and life seemed to return to its regular pace. But then, my ex-girlfriend's unease began to shift into something darker. It started subtly. She mentioned feeling uneasy in her own home, experiencing a growing sense of paranoia that wasn't there before. She would describe feeling watched, the same sensation I had experienced in the guest room, though it seemed to intensify. I tried to reassure her that these feelings were just a byproduct of the strange events we had encountered, but I could tell that her fear was genuine and growing. One evening, after we had been back for a few weeks, my ex-girlfriend decided to spend the night alone in the rental house in North Carolina while her father was away. She wanted to confront her fears and see if she could find any rational explanation for what had happened. She arrived at the house and spent the first few hours settling in, trying to feel at ease. She said everything seemed normal at first, but as night fell, the atmosphere in the house grew heavy and oppressive. The same sensations that had plagued me during our stay seemed to envelop her. Around midnight, she called me in a state of panic. Her voice was shaky as she described hearing footsteps on the stairs, just as her father had mentioned. The sound was faint but unmistakable, and it seemed to be coming closer to her room. She was alone in the house, and the idea of someone, or something, moving around in the dark was too much for her. She had tried to dismiss the noises as the house settling or the wind, but the sounds were too distinct, too deliberate to ignore. I could hear the fear in her voice, and it was clear that this experience was affecting her deeply. Her night alone was filled with more unsettling occurrences. She heard the phone ring 3 times, just as her father had described, and although she knew it was disconnected, the rings seemed to echo through the empty house. The tree outside, the one with the face, became a source of even greater dread. She told me she couldn't look at it without feeling an intense, visceral fear. It was as if the tree was alive, watching her, waiting for something. When she finally returned home, she was exhausted and emotionally drained. Her experiences had left her feeling unsettled and paranoid. She began to avoid being alone, particularly at night, and would frequently check locks and windows, a habit she had never had before. It was as if the fear had followed her back from North Carolina, embedding itself into her daily life. Despite her attempts to dismiss it, The impact of those days in the mountains had clearly left a mark. Our relationship began to suffer under the strain of these experiences. The fear and paranoia that had seeped into our lives created tension between us, and it was hard to find a way back to normalcy. We tried to rationalize what had happened, but the experiences were so vivid and disconcerting that it was difficult to ignore their impact. Eventually, we decided to part ways, largely due to the strain of these unsettling events. The breakup was amicable, but the experiences in the mountains left a lasting impression on both of us. We both moved on with our lives, but the memory of that trip and the strange occurrences remained with us, haunting our thoughts from time to time. As for the tree and the house in North Carolina, I don't know if I'll ever return. The memories of those days continue to linger, a reminder of a time when reality seemed to blur with something inexplicable and unsettling. Whether it was the land's dark history, a trick of the mind, or something more paranormal, the experience remains one of the most unsettling and unexplained events of my life. In the heart of Udorn, Thailand, there existed a dense, ancient forest that the locals called the Whispering Grove. This forest, filled with towering trees whose canopies stretched far into the sky, was a place of reverence and mystery. It was said that the Whispering Grove was not just a forest, but a living entity, where the trees held secrets that transcended time itself. The people of Udorn spoke of the trees as if they were wise old beings, their leaves whispering tales of the past and the future. The grove was renowned for its serenity, a place where the world seemed to pause and the hum of the city felt like a distant memory. Among the trees, there was one particularly majestic oak that stood out. Its trunk was gnarled and broad, with branches that seemed to stretch infinitely, reaching out as if they were trying to embrace the entire sky. The locals called this tree the heart of the grove, and it was said to be the oldest and wisest of all. It was in this enchanted forest that a young American soldier named David found himself stationed. David was a pragmatic man, guided by logic and reason, but the tranquil beauty of the Whispering Grove stirred something deep within him, a curiosity that defied explanation. He had heard the local legends about the trees and their mystical inhabitants, but had always dismissed them as folklore. However, the longer he spent in Udorn, the more he was drawn to the grove, feeling an inexplicable pull toward the heart of the grove. One evening, as the sun began to set, casting a golden hue across the forest floor, David ventured into the grove with a sense of purpose. He had heard whispers of an old tradition. If one were to sit quietly by the heart of the grove during the twilight hours, they might witness something extraordinary. This was not an ordinary forest. It was a place where the line between the tangible and the ethereal blurred, where legends breathed life into the ancient trees. David approached the heart of the grove with a mixture of skepticism and anticipation. He settled himself against the massive trunk, the rough bark pressing into his back. The air was thick with the scent of earth and the faint, sweet aroma of blooming flowers. As he closed his eyes, he allowed himself to be enveloped by the serenity of the place. In the quiet, David began to hear the sounds of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the chirping of crickets, and the distant call of a bird. But as the minutes ticked by, he started to hear something different, something almost like a melody. It was as if the trees themselves were singing, their voices weaving together in a harmonious chorus. The sound was both haunting and soothing, a melody that seemed to resonate with something deep within his soul. David opened his eyes, and as he looked at the heart of the grove, he could have sworn he saw a subtle movement in the bark. It was as if the tree itself was alive, breathing and watching him. The bark seemed to ripple, and for a fleeting moment, he saw what appeared to be a face that was serene and wise, with eyes that seemed to hold centuries of knowledge. His heart raced, and he blinked, trying to make sense of what he had seen. Was it a trick of the light, or was there something more profound happening? David's skepticism wavered as he continued to observe the tree, now fully immersed in the experience. The melody of the grove grew stronger, and he could feel the energy around him shifting, as if the very essence of the forest was coming alive. As night fell, and the forest became a tapestry of shadows and moonlight, David felt a deep connection to the heart of the grove. The experience was unlike anything he had ever felt before. a reminder that there were mysteries in the world that defied explanation. The Whispering Grove had revealed a glimpse of its ancient secrets, and David was left with a sense of wonder and reverence for the magic that lay hidden within the trees. Little did David know, this encounter was just the beginning of a journey that would challenge his understanding of reality and lead him to discover truths that were far beyond the realm of ordinary experience. As days passed since his encounter with the heart of the grove, David found himself increasingly drawn to the Whispering Grove. The experience had ignited a spark within him, compelling him to explore the mysteries of the forest more deeply. He began to visit the grove regularly, always seeking that elusive connection he had felt on that fateful evening. One crisp morning, and David decided to venture deeper into the forest than he ever had before. Guided by an unspoken intuition, he followed a narrow, winding path that seemed to beckon him further into the heart of the grove. The sunlight filtered through the dense canopy, casting dappled patterns on the forest floor and creating an atmosphere of enchantment. As David walked, he noticed subtle changes in the environment. The trees appeared older and more majestic, their trunks adorned with intricate patterns of moss and lichen. The air was filled with the fragrance of wildflowers and the gentle murmur of a nearby stream. It was as if the forest was alive with a quiet, pervasive energy. After what felt like hours of wandering, David arrived at a small clearing. In the center of the clearing stood an ancient tree, its bark twisted into elaborate knots and swirls. It was unlike any tree he had seen before, with a presence that seemed almost otherworldly. David approached the tree with a sense of reverence, feeling the same pull he had experienced with the heart of the grove. As he reached out to touch the tree, a soft voice spoke from behind him. David turned to see a woman standing at the edge of the clearing. She was dressed in flowing garments that seemed to blend seamlessly with the forest, and her eyes sparkled with an ethereal light. Her presence was both soothing and commanding, as if she were a part of the very essence of the grove. "Welcome, seeker," the woman said with a gentle smile. "I am Aira, the guardian of this sacred place." David was taken aback. He had never seen anyone like her before, and her sudden appearance was both unexpected and intriguing. "How do you know who I am?" he asked, his curiosity piqued. Ira's smile widened. "The forest knows all who enter with a pure heart. It has whispered of your presence and your quest for understanding." David's mind raced. "What is this place? What do you mean by the forest knows?" Ira gestured for him to sit on a nearby rock, and David complied. She began to explain with a calm and measured tone. "This grove is more than just a collection of trees. It is a living repository of ancient wisdom and knowledge. The trees are imbued with the spirits of the hamadryads who dwell within them. These spirits have existed for millennia, nurturing the land and guiding those who seek wisdom." David listened intently, trying to absorb the significance of Ira's words. "And what is your role here?" "I am a guide," Ira replied. "I help those who are ready to understand the deeper truths of the forest. The heart of the grove and the other ancient trees are conduits of this wisdom, but only those who approach with respect and sincerity can truly connect with their knowledge." Ira's words resonated with David, and he felt a sense of awe. "How can I learn more? What should I do?" Ira's expression grew serious. "To truly understand the forest, you must first understand yourself. The wisdom of the grove is not something that can be learned quickly. It requires patience, openness, and a willingness to look within." David nodded, feeling a mixture of excitement and apprehension. "I'm willing to do whatever it takes." Ira smiled, her eyes gleaming with approval. "Then you must embark on a journey of inner discovery. The forest will reveal its secrets to you in time, but first you must prepare yourself. Meditate, reflect, and be attentive to the signs that the grove will send you." With that, Ira rose gracefully and began to walk away, blending into the forest as effortlessly as a whisper. David watched her disappear, feeling both inspired and humbled. He understood that his journey was just beginning and that the forest held many more mysteries waiting to be uncovered. As he left the clearing and made his way back to the edge of the grove, David felt a renewed sense of purpose. The Whispering Grove had opened a door to a world of ancient wisdom, and he was determined to step through it, no matter where it might lead. David's days became a blend of rigorous discipline and mystical exploration. He embraced Ira's advice, dedicating time each day to meditation and self-reflection. He found a quiet spot near the heart of the grove where he could sit undisturbed, letting the tranquil atmosphere guide his thoughts and open his senses. As the weeks passed, David began to notice subtle changes within himself. His thoughts became clearer, and he felt more attuned to the natural world around him. He started to see patterns in the forest that he hadn't noticed before, how the light played upon the leaves, the intricate dance of shadows, and the rhythmic pulse of the earth beneath his feet. It was as if the forest itself was communicating with him, sending him signs and messages through its gentle whispers. One evening, as twilight descended upon the grove, David experienced a profound shift. The sky was painted in shades of purple and gold, and the air was filled with a palpable sense of anticipation. As he settled down near the heart of the grove, he noticed a soft glow emanating from the tree. It was a subtle, ethereal light that seemed to pulse in harmony with the forest's heartbeat. David closed his eyes, letting the calming energy of the grove wash over him. He felt a deep connection to the land, a sense of being a part of something much larger than himself. The familiar melody of the forest, the rustling of leaves, the distant call of a bird, merged into a harmonious symphony that resonated with his very soul. In this heightened state of awareness, David began to see vivid images in his mind's eye. He saw scenes from the past, ancient rituals performed by the forest's early inhabitants, ceremonies held to honor the spirits of the trees, and moments of profound connection between humans and nature. These images were accompanied by feelings of reverence and awe, as if he were witnessing the very essence of the grove's history. Amidst these visions, David perceived a figure emerging from the light, a vision of a dryad, her form shimmering with a translucent glow. She was graceful and radiant, with eyes that held the wisdom of centuries. Her presence was both calming and awe-inspiring, and David felt an overwhelming sense of recognition, as if he had known her in another time and place. The dryad spoke to him in a voice that was both melodic and profound. "David, you have sought the truth with a pure heart, and the grove has granted you this vision. The wisdom of the forest is vast and ancient, and it holds secrets that can guide you in your journey." David listened intently, his heart racing with excitement. What is it that I need to know? How can I truly understand the wisdom of the grove? The dryad's gaze was gentle and reassuring. The wisdom of the grove is not merely knowledge, but a way of being. It is about harmony with nature, understanding the interconnectedness of all life, and recognizing the role you play in the greater whole. You must learn to listen deeply, to observe without judgment, and to act with compassion. David absorbed her words, feeling their significance resonate within him. This isn't right. How can I apply this knowledge to my life? What is the purpose of this journey? The dryad's smile was warm and encouraging. Your journey is one of transformation. As you embrace the wisdom of the grove, you will find that it guides you toward a deeper understanding of yourself and your place in the world. It will help you cultivate a sense of purpose and guide you in making choices that reflect the values of harmony and balance. With that, the vision began to fade, and the dryad's form dissolved into the gentle light of the grove. David opened his eyes, feeling a profound sense of peace and clarity. The forest around him seemed even more alive and vibrant, and he felt a renewed sense of purpose. As he left the heart of the grove, David knew that his journey was far from over. The revelations he had received were just the beginning, and he was eager to continue exploring the mysteries of the forest. The wisdom of the grove had offered him a new perspective on life, one that would guide him as he navigated the path ahead. David's newfound understanding of the forest's wisdom began to influence every aspect of his life. With each visit to the Whispering Grove, he deepened his connection to its ancient energy, and the lessons he learned began to shape his actions and choices. The transformation within him was both profound and subtle, affecting his outlook, his relationships, and his sense of purpose. One crisp autumn morning, David was called to attend a local festival celebrating the harvest. The festival was a vibrant display of community spirit, with colorful decorations, lively music, and an array of traditional foods. As David walked through the festival, he noticed how the local people seemed to embody the very harmony and balance he had learned from the grove. They moved with grace, their interactions were filled with warmth, and their joy was palpable. The festival's centerpiece was a large oak tree, adorned with ribbons and ornaments, symbolizing the abundance of the harvest. David felt a sense of recognition as he approached the tree. It was reminiscent of the heart of the grove, and he sensed that it was more than just a festive decoration. It was a symbol of the interconnectedness of life and the gratitude for nature's gifts. As David mingled with the festival goers, he found himself drawn into conversations about the importance of living in harmony with nature. People spoke about the changes they had seen in their community, the ways they had learned to respect and nurture the land, and the traditions that had been passed down through generations. David shared his own experiences and insights, and he found that his understanding resonated with others. It was as if the wisdom of the grove had found a voice within him, one that could inspire and guide others. Later that evening, as the festival wound down and the stars began to twinkle in the sky, David felt a deep sense of fulfillment. The lessons he had learned from the grove were not just abstract concepts, but practical truths that could be applied to everyday life. He had witnessed firsthand how a community that embraced these values could thrive in harmony with the natural world. As David made his way back to the forest, he reflected on the journey he had undertaken. The transformation he had experienced was not merely about acquiring knowledge, but about becoming a part of a larger, living system. He realized that the wisdom of the grove was not just for him, but for everyone who sought to live with greater awareness and connection. When he arrived at the heart of the grove, David felt a sense of gratitude and reverence. The tree's presence seemed even more profound, its ancient wisdom more accessible. He sat in quiet meditation, reflecting on the journey that had brought him to this point. The gentle rustling of leaves and the soft glow of the moonlight created a serene atmosphere, and David felt a deep sense of belonging. In the stillness of the grove, David understood that his journey was a continuous process of growth and learning. The wisdom he had gained was a living, evolving experience, one that would continue to guide him as he navigated the complexities of life. He knew that the forest's secrets were not finite, but boundless, always revealing new layers of understanding. As he prepared to leave the grove, David made a silent vow to honor the lessons he had learned and to share them with others. He felt a profound sense of responsibility to continue the legacy of harmony and balance that the grove embodied. The journey had transformed him, and he was committed to carrying the wisdom of the Whispering Grove into every aspect of his life. With a heart full of gratitude and a spirit renewed by the forest's ancient knowledge, David stepped out of the grove and into the world, ready to embrace the future with a deeper sense of purpose and connection. The Whispering Grove had not only revealed its secrets, but had also awakened a new chapter in his life, one that would be guided by the timeless wisdom of nature and the enduring spirit of the trees. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like, comment, and share the video. See you next time.